Gopi Jana Balaba Girivaradari Gopi Jana Balaba Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Gopi Jana Balaba Girivaradari Gopi Jana Balaba Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Punjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Shri Radhe Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Shri Radhe Jaya Radha Giridhari Radha Giridhari Shri Radhe Jai Radha Giridhari Radha Giridhari Shri Radhe Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Shri Radha Madhava Ki Jai Gantara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Gaur Premanandi Nivo Sarva Sastra Pipiyusha Sarva Vidarka Satvila Sarva Sarantara Nadya Sabala Koka Tripada O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular food of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana Shrimad Bhagavata Prabhu Kalidranto Tata Ditya Shri Krishna Parvatata. O life fair of all the supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Shri Krishna. Marekabando Matsangin Maguru Mahadana Manisaraka Madbhagya Madananda Namonstute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Sadhu Sarutade Natina Shoshtata Kara Hanamanjagadajan Mam Premna Ritkandayos O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Kantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we are reading from Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 12, entitled Rahugana Converses with Jadabharat. Text number 5 and 6. Brahmana Uvacha Ayang Jano Nama Chalan Prativyang Yav Partiva Kasya Hetoho Tasyapi Changriyo Adi Gulpa Jangha Januru Madhyora Shirodharang Shaha Angshe Didarvi Sibika Chayasyang Sovira Rajetya Padesha Ashte Yasmin Bhavan Rudha Nijabhimano Rajangsi Sindhush Vitti Dharmadhandaha Brahmana Uvacha Ayang Jano Nama Chalan Prativyang Yav Partivad Kasya Hetoho Tasyapi Changyod Adhigulpajangha Januru Madhyora Shirodarangshaha Angshe Distarvi Sibika Chatesyang Sovir Rajetyapateshaste Yasmin Bhavan Rudha Nijabhimano Rajangsi Sindhushviti Durmadandaha Ayang Jano Nama Chalam Prativyang Yav Partivachasya Hetoho Tasyapi Changyo Adigulpajangha Januru Madhyora Shirodharang Shaha Angshe Didarvi Sibika Chayasyang Sovira Rajetyupatesha Aste Yasmin Bhavan Rudha Nijabhimano Rajangsi Sindhushviti Durmadanda. Word for word. Brahmana Uvacha, the Brahmana said, I am this Jana person, Nama, celebrated as such, Chalan, moving, Pritivyam, on the earth, Ya, who, Partiva, a transformation of the earth, Partiva, O king, who possesses a similar earthly body, Kasya, for what? Heto, reason, Tasya api, of him also, Cha, and Angreyo, feet, Adi, above, Gulpa, ankles, Jangha, calves, Janu, knees, Uru, thighs, Madhyora, waist, Shiradara, neck, Angsha, shoulders, Angshe, shoulder, Adhi, upon, Darvi, made of wood, Shipika, palanquin, Cha, and, Yasyam, on which, Sovira Raja, the king of Sovira, Iti, thus, Apadesha, known as, Aste, there is, Yasmin, in which, Pavan, your lordship, Rudha, imposed upon, Nija Abhimana, having a conception of false prestige, Raja Angsi, I am the king, Sindhushu, in the state of Sindhu, Iti, thus, Durmada Andha, captivated by false prestige. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. The self-realized Brahmana Jadabharat said, among the various material combinations and permutations, there are various forms and earthly transformations. For some reason, these move on the surface of the earth and are called palanquin carriers. Those material transformations which do not move are gross material objects like stones. In any case, the material body is made of earth and stone, and in the form of feet, ankles, calves, knees, thighs, torso, throat, and head. Upon the shoulders is the wooden palanquin, and within the palanquin is the so-called king of Sovira. The body of the king is simply another transformation of earth, but within that body your lordship is situated, and falsely thinking that you are the king of the state of Sovira. Purport. After analyzing the material bodies of the palanquin carrier and the palanquin passenger, Jadabharat concludes that the real living force is the living entity. The living entity is the offshoot or offspring of Lord Vishnu. Therefore, within the material world, among moving and non-moving things, the real principle is Lord Vishnu. Due to his presence, everything is working, and there are actions and reactions. One who understands Lord Vishnu as the original cause of everything is to be understood to be perfectly situated in knowledge. Although he was falsely proud of being a king, King Rahugana was not really situated in knowledge. Therefore, he was rebuking the palanquin carriers, including the self-realized Brahmana, Jadabharat. This is the first accusation Jadabharat made against the king, who was daring to talk to a learned Brahmana from the flimsy ground of ignorance, identifying everything with matter. King Rahugana argues that the living entity is within the body, and that the body is fatigued, and that when the body is fatigued, the living entity within must therefore be suffering. It is clearly explained in the following verses that the living entity does not suffer due to the body's fatigue. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti gives an example of a child heavily decorated with ornaments. Although the child's body is very delicate, he does not feel fatigue, nor do the parents think that his ornaments should be taken away. The living entity has nothing to do with bodily pains and pleasures. These are simply mental concoctions. An intelligent man will find the original cause of everything. Material combinations and permutations may be a matter of fact in worldly dealings, but actually the living force, the soul, has nothing to do with them. Those who are materially upset take care of the body and manufacture Daridra Narayana, poor Narayan. However, it is not a fact that the soul or supersoul becomes poor simply because the body is poor. These are the statements of ignorant people. The soul and supersoul are always apart from bodily pleasure and pain. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Agyanatimarandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukham Karoti Vachalam Pangun Nagaiti Garim Yakripa Tamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So this is such a wonderful pastime. Very important pastime, actually. My spiritual master wrote a book, an entire book on this pastime. It's called Perfect Escape. Unfortunately, it's now no longer in print, but if someone finds a copy, I highly recommend you read it. So I was thinking how the Lord certainly works in mysterious ways. That of all the people that could have been carrying Maharaj Rahugana's palanquin, uh, a self-realized Brahmana was chosen. Obviously there's only 4 persons that carry the palanquin. And yes, one of them just happened to be a self-realized soul. And as soon as Maharaj Rahugana realized, the gravity of the situation, that he had a qualified Brahmana and self-realized soul carrying him, did he then descend from his palanquin and fall at the feet of Jada Bharat. So in Chaitanya Charitamrita, there is the well-known verse, Brahmanda Brahmite Kon Bhagavan Jiva Guru Krishna Prasade Paya Bhakti Lata Beach. That the living entity has been traversing the Brahmanda, the material cosmic manifestation, since the beginning of time. And it is only by unimaginable good fortune that conditioned soul comes in contact with the self-realized guru, who can impart to them divya, spiritual knowledge. And I've been reflecting on my own situation, the how I first connected with my guru. So I was staying at the house of a drug dealer in Manukau in South Auckland. Don't ask me what I was doing there, but I was one day I walked into his garage, and I saw a copy of The Science of Self-Realization standing upright on his coffee table. And immediately my mind was just fully captivated by the picture of Srila Prabhupada on the front cover of The Science of Self-Realization. I was thinking he looked so like aristocratic and authoritative, so I actually stole that book from him. I stole that book, and then I hitchhiked. At that time, I'd been traveling for about 3 years, and I'd hitchhiked all the way around New Zealand. So I hitchhiked from Manukau to Tauranga, and I was staying in the Mount Maunganui. And as I was reading The Science of Self-Realization, I kept on hearing, the quotes from Bhagavad Gita. So I thought, where can I get hold of this Bhagavad Gita? So I was calling around so many bookshops in the Bay of Plenty, and I was saying, do you have this Bhagavad Gita by this Swami? I couldn't even pronounce his name, and yeah, none of them had the book. Then literally the day that I finished the reading The Science of Self-Realization, I met Dinadayala Mataji on the street. She stopped me in Mount Maunganui, and she distributed a Bhagavad Gita to me. And she invited me to a home program. There's one senior Vaishnav called Chaitanya Nitai Prabhu, and who's staying there with his family. Maybe some of you know Chaitanya Nitai Prabhu. He lived in New Zealand for many years. He's from France. And he had just moved to Tauranga at that time. This was in 2002. And the home program, I can't remember if it was that night or the following day, the following night. But anyhow, I went to that home program, and just by chance, His Holiness Devamrita Swami Maharaj was giving a talk, and I was thinking that my spiritual master was there at Chaitanya Nitai's house for one night and one night only, and he hadn't been in that area for many, many years. And the the sequence of events, like just that brought us together to connect, it was very, very mystical. After I left Taranga, I went to Hamilton, and in Hamilton there was my godbrother Julian Yatra and his wife Rasya Yatra. They had a restaurant at that time called Gora's Place. And I stayed at Gora's place for maybe a week or two. And during that time, Devamrita Swami just happened to be passing through again, you know, through Hamilton. And then after he left, there was I was planning to go to Wellington, but my whole meditation was to stop off in Taupo on the way and do a skydive. And what happened was four of the most powerful Mataji preachers, Krishna Loka Mataji, Dinadayala Mataji, Guruvani Mataji, and Sri Yashoda Mataji, they had been collecting Lakshmi at Big Day Out in Auckland, and they were passing through and they stopped at Gora's place at the restaurant. And they said to me, "Well, you're going to Wellington, we're going. Why don't you just come with us?" I said, "No, no, 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 no. I'm stopping off in Taupo and doing a skydive on the way down." And then Krishna Loka, Krishna Loka, she started preaching to me. She said, my name was Simon back then. She said, Simon, there's going to be someone that's packing your parachute who has imperfect senses. They're liable to make mistakes. They're subject to the illusion, and they have the propensity to cheat. And that was it. She just destroyed any inkling desire I had just to jump out of an airplane. So I got kidnapped by these four Matajis. And not only it was a tiny car, and I had my surfboard with me as well. So there's five of us in this car with my surfboard sticking out the window, driving for like 7 hours on the way down from Hamilton to Wellington. It was quite an experience. So, and yeah, then of course I met my spiritual master in Wellington at that time as well. And then a month or two after that, I had to leave New Zealand because my visa ran out. Anyhow, it's very wonderful how the Lord makes these incredible, unexpected arrangements for the conditioned soul to come in contact with the bona fide spiritual master. So we're hearing today how Maharaj Ruhugana is speaking on the flimsy ground of ignorance. So in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, it's described how Lord Brahma engineered this material universe. And as he created this universe, he brought forth the five different flavors, if you like, of ignorance. So there is tama, which means the lack of spiritual knowledge. When one is influenced by tama, they they completely forget about their self due to the lack of spiritual knowledge. Then there's moha, that means illusion or delusion. It means that one has a strong material attachments and one becomes bewildered by those attachments. Then there's maha moha, which is which means excessive infatuation with sense objects. And unfortunately, I know a few people like that. Then there's tamishra, anger, which happens when one develops anger or envy towards others, and especially towards the Supreme Lord. And then there is Andhatamishra, which is blind darkness, when one becomes excessively fearful of death and misidentifying the body as the self. So if one is influenced by ignorance, how can one have any knowledge or any real knowledge, especially knowledge of the absolute? We know that when one is in ignorance, one is deeply immersed in illusion, and one cannot see things as they are. So this was Maharaj Rahugana's situation. He was considering himself to be the body in the position of a king. Which according to his material calculation was a very important position. But from the self-realized point of view, from the vision of Jada Bharat, he was a complete fool, thinking himself to be superior, although he was exactly the same as any other living entity. So one should be very careful about who they are speaking to, especially a self-realized soul. So the self-realized soul is particularly empowered to cut down the false pride and false prestige of the conditioned soul. The famous saying goes, the pauper is proud of his penny. So in Kali Yuga, we've become proud of so many insignificant things. It's really quite embarrassing. We become proud of our tennis shoes. We become proud of our cars. I was thinking about it. Every single car is just a piece of metal stationed on 4 pieces of rubber. And I remember many years ago in Brisbane, I was on book distribution, and I was in the middle of an exchange, and this guy, his mind just like flew over to this, I don't know, it was like a Lamborghini or something, and he was just like, "Do you see that? That's incredible." He was just glorifying this car, and I said, "Oh, what's the big deal? It's just a chunk of metal on 4 pieces of rubber." And that was like Maha Aparad, He became so offended. You said, "You have no idea what you're saying," and unfortunately, he just stormed off. I didn't realize he would be so sensitive over such a statement. But yes, But it's amazing just by either the shape of the car or this tiny little emblem that's on the bonnet, that tells you what brand the car is. We become so proud. Just look at what I've got. I've got a Lamborghini or a Porsche. Therefore I'm superior to you. So this is the sorry situation of the conditioned soul in Kali Yuga. So Srila Raghunath Das Goswami explains in his Sri Manashiksha, that basically in the 6th verse, it describes how, one is taking a bath in the trickling urine of the great ass of of full-blown hypocrisy and deceit. So it's described where when hypocrisy and deceit have vanished from our consciousness, from our heart, it's said at that point, pretty much, all anarthas have disappeared, have gone. But yet, Raghunath Das Goswami, he says, Pratishta Shvatrishta Svapacharamani me hridi narthet Katam sadhu prema Sprishati shucheretan nanumanaha Sada tvam sevasva prabhudayita samanta matulang Yata tam nishkasya tvaritamiha tam veshayati saha. So this is in the next verse, in verse 7. He says, Pratishtasha drishtas for pachiramani me hridinatet. He said, in the heart, in the hridi, the heart, there is this Ramani. A Ramani is the name given to a woman of easy virtue, a prostitute. So he said that in the heart there is this prostitute, and she has a special diet. What is that diet? Svapacha. She likes to cook and eat dogs. So there is this unchaste dog eating. And then pratishtasha drishta. Drishta means shameless. So it said that when all the anarthas have left the heart, still there is this shameless, unchaste, dog-eating woman. And what is that? Pratishtasha. False prestige and fame lurking within the heart. And Raghunath Das Goswami, he says, if this unchaste, dog-eating woman is lurking within the heart, how will the pure goddess of prema reside there? And then he gives the solution to ridding the consciousness of this pratishta. And that is Sada Sevasva Dayita, Prabhu Dayita, that one must always serve the general of the devotees. In other words, the spiritual master. By always rendering service to the spiritual master, one will always remain in a humble position. And it is a fact, by serving the spiritual master, if he sees pride or false prestige manifest in his disciple, he cuts down. In fact, this is another meaning of the word sadhu, one who cuts. So, yes, Raghunath Das Goswami, he gives us wonderful instruction on how to deal with this pratishta. So in Kali Yuga, we, as I said, we find so many things to be proud of, but actually we have absolutely nothing, nothing to be proud of. We're in such a poverty-stricken situation, both spiritually and materially. You know, everything's made of plastic or numbers on a screen, you know, and that's considered real wealth. But actually, no, real wealth is like gold, silver, diamonds. That's real wealth. Real wealth isn't how many plastic cards you have in your wallet or how many numbers you have on the screen. So, in order to attain real wealth, we have to remove this false prestige and fame from the heart. And then the pure goddess of prema will reside there. Pure love for God. So we're hearing today how Jada Bharat is beginning his spiel of how to, or not his spiel, his narration, his Vani, his instructions. He's beginning his instructions to Maharaj Rahugana about how to cut down his false prestige. Yeah, in New Zealand they call it the tall poppy syndrome. When someone gets too puffed up and proud, then they're cut down. So this is a transcendental um, tall poppy syndrome happening. That there's Ma Jadabharata is cutting down the pride of Maharaj Rahugana in this way. Okay, so I'll stop there and after ask if there's any questions or comments.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandot Pranam.
Hare Krishna
Thank you
Prabhuji.
very much for explaining that text so nicely with your own examples and your journey, how that transformation happens in you right from the beginning, and finally was referring that verses from Raghunath Das Goswami, how we understand this material wealth is nothing because the heart is full of Ramani, which is the Pratishta, or you can say unchaste woman, and the
Mm,
behavior is like always looking for something or looking for false prestige without any meaning. But the real meaning of the heart is to look for the presence of the Supreme Lord, which is already in there. But to understand them, we need the Shastra, or we understand that we need our Guru to tell us the difference between this material aspect and the spiritual aspect of life,
mm,
which we are already having, but we are unknown of that fact, that how to understand that body and the soul in a different way. So you nicely mentioned with this Raghunath Das Goswami's verses mentioning how people are proud of their false prestige, having materially so wealthy, but they are very much poor in their spiritual understanding. And that understanding comes from Bhagavad Gita 10.8.
mm,
Yeah, those are the people real intelligent. They always think of the super soul and understand that we have nothing to do with this, but the real is that aham sarvasya prabhavo matta sarvamid pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha shavanvita. So the wise who perfectly know this, they engage in my devotionals, and with that understanding, one can understand the difference between body and the soul. And when it get engaged in the service of the super soul, it becomes enlightened. So that knowledge was given to Raghunath, sorry, King Rahuguna,
mm.
by Varad Maharaj. So that is what this text talks about, all about this. Thank you so much for nicely explaining this text,
Krishna.
so simplifying the fact. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu,
Hare
Pranam
Krishna.
for
Hare
your
Krishna, Guru.
nice exposition of these words. But just on the meeting for Guru, thank you for sharing your journey. Is it accidental or predestined or?
It's the arrangements of the Lord. He knows he's residing within our heart, and he knows when a conditioned soul is ready to take up their spiritual practice. So he makes the arrangement, and out of his causeless mercy. I can't say it's predestined, because it's up to the individual. The Lord reciprocates, with the individual. If the individual is, that's our minute independence. We have the minute independence whether we want to stay in the material world and try to enjoy, or whether we're sick and tired and we want to turn towards Krishna. If we want to turn towards Krishna, then Krishna sends the spiritual master along to assist us.
Thank you, Prabhu. So
Okay.
is there like some pre-qualification, somebody has to get in Krishna, or there is some urge within the heart to find some spiritual master that propels the living entity to meet a spiritual master?
Well, everyone, some people in their previous lives may have come in contact with bhakti, with Krishna, through prasadam, through hearing the holy name. So, and they may have accumulated some credits, some bhakti credits. So, everyone's, at their own level, and so obviously some are more qualified than others. But even if one, is coming up from the reptiles, and they somehow or other they come in contact with Krishna, whether through prasadam, then these credits they accumulate, and then when the soul is done, finished trying to enjoy in the material world, then Krishna sends along the guru.
Thank you. Thank you.
But yeah, some desire has to be there to get out of the material world. Otherwise, there's no point in Krishna sending along the guru.
Yeah, there should adao sadhu. So there should be initial some faith or some inclination to a spiritual life.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing this question.
Hare Krishna. Yes, Prabhu.
No, it doesn't seem to be any more reflection or questions. So
There's
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I just
Hare-
wanted to thank you too for your beautiful life journey sharing. For somehow I find these stories so inspiring. So I love hearing shastras and pastimes, but these stories of Vaishnavis, how they found their way to Krishna, so nectar for me personally, I'm just getting so much inspired with that. And as it said, that guru drops you the rope, right, to the hole, and you got to grab it. So you got to be not too much concentrating on that material life to notice this rope, right, to grab it and pull yourself out of this material suffering labyrinth, right? Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Master Ji. Lilotsa, who is here, would like to ask a question.
I was wondering why, even though the soul doesn't suffer when the body suffers, why does it sometimes feel like I'm suffering when the body's suffering?
So she's asking that when the body suffers, how is it that the soul isn't suffering as well when it feels like it? Yeah. So well, it in the material world, if we're not, if we're not situated in bhakti, then the soul is suffering, and the body's suffering. Everything about us is suffering. But yeah, in bhakti, we can, because everyone has some sort of realization to a greater or lesser degree as a spiritual being in bhakti. That's we as a spiritual being, we're different from the body. So the devotees are somewhat aloof. Of course, we still feel the pains of the body, but nonetheless, we do not wallow in that suffering. And we understand that it's actually is what I'm due. Actually, what I'm due should be a lot worse than what I'm getting. Krishna just gives us a little token of our portion of suffering, just as a reminder. Don't fall back into the material world. So, yes, the soul in the material world, the soul and the body are suffering terribly, but in bhakti, the soul should be feeling enlivened, even though the body is in a suffering condition. We should be feeling enlivened and enthusiastic in our spiritual practice. Okay. Any other questions or comments, or shall we finish here? Okay.
There doesn't seem to be. We'll finish up.
Okay, thank you all for your kind attention. Gantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Panchakalpatarubhyascha, Kripa Sindhuvascha, Namo Namo
अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय,
ki
जय
jai.
शंभु प्रभु की जय।